The alt-left on the rise. Members of an anti-Trump movement admit they're ready to take action and even praise the violence unleashed at the University of California, Berkeley earlier this month. Britain's media accuses the Kremlin of plotting to assassinate Montenegro's prime minister, basing its claims on unnamed sources. Also this hour. Scuffles erupt between police and demonstrators in Kiev, marking the 3rd anniversary of the deadliest day in the Maidan uprising. Just after midday this Monday, February the 20th in Moscow. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Maidan. Our top story ahead of President's Day celebrated in the U.S. on Monday. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of New York and Chicago in a series of anti-Donald Trump protests. The rallies were peaceful, but 2 weeks ago another march against the U.S. president's policies turned violent at the University of California, Berkeley. Caleb Maupin asked the anti-Trump protesters what measures they're ready to apply in their battle.
Much of left-wing politics in the United States is about liberalism. It's about inclusion of different perspectives, views, and lifestyles. This is what democracy looks like. But what about these people who show up at right-wing events and start breaking windows or attacking people that they consider to be bigots? Some people have started to call these elements the alt-left.
The alt-left wants to shut down speech through violence, doesn't believe in the ideal of free speech, for example. Instead of, trying to challenge speech they disagree with, they'd rather shut it down violently.
Ma'am?
And they're willing to use violence and advocating violence, not against even property, but against people even.
We decided to ask some Antifa or anti-fascist protesters just how far they're willing to go in order to stop Trump.
And really providing any real solutions to what it's going to take to stop the growth of fascism in this country. We've got to take direct action in order to do that.
We can't rely on politicians or just the lawyers. We've got to rely on ourselves.
Now, the FBI has been sent in to UC Berkeley to investigate the chaos that broke out ahead of a right-wing speaker's visit.
You also heard that the FBI is actually on campus investigating the incident. Have you heard this?
I heard rumors about it, but, I guess that's a problem with a lot of things going on now, that there's a lot of rumor and hearsay and nobody's actually sure what's going on.
Many liberals across the country were quite uncomfortable with the violence against police officers.
It's definitely a damaged reputation. A lot of people look at the student's body and say, you know what, they're the people engaged in the violence. They're the ones who are at fault.
However, many students here at UC Berkeley told us that they have no objection.
I'm very proud that students on this campus have stood up, and as well as the community, to stop the growth of fascism and to specifically defend each other from these attacks and their violent attacks on us.
Thousands of students were completely united in making clear that we are not going to let fascists speak on our campus. Hate speech is not free speech, and we will not tolerate that here.
In many urban areas, New York City, Southern California, it's quite trendy to dislike Donald Trump. Many big corporations such as Starbucks have actually lined up behind the Stop Trump movement. But the difference between the mainstream liberals and the emerging alt-left seems to not so much be how much you dislike the Donald, but how far you're willing to go to shut down or shut up those who do. Caleb Maupin, RT, Berkeley, California.
Moving on now, fresh accusations have been thrown at Russia. This time, many British media outlets are convinced the Kremlin was behind a murder plot to kill Montenegro's prime minister to prevent the country from joining NATO. Nikki Aaron picks up the story.
It's been one headline after another. So what's Russia being accused of this time? Well, as headlines go, this one is a real head-turner. One country's leader plotting to assassinate the leader of another country. It's like the plot for a Hollywood movie. And yet here it is in black and white in a respected British newspaper. So there must be some solid evidence here. leaked documents, intercepted phone calls, informant testimonies. Such a sensational headline, and yet the only proof that's provided are unnamed sources. OK, but at least the article is balanced, except that it's not really. There's little mention of Russia's standpoint, apart from to mention that the Kremlin strongly denies these claims. It might have, for instance, been relevant to mention some of Russia's past comments on Montenegro, or perhaps even that time the new Prime Minister of Montenegro spoke about how his country cherishes its friendship with Russia.
Montenegro has cherished its good friendship with Russia for more than 300 years, and we would never allow our territory to be misused in order to disrupt Russian security in any way.
But that just wouldn't fit the plot now, would it? Plus, there's little space for stuff like that when you've got all these great photos showing some shifty-looking characters, maybe the plotters. And look at this photograph, this one guy in the same crowd as Sergei Lavrov. Incriminating stuff. But if that's not enough to convince you, here's a step-by-step guide on how the attack was supposed to take place. Again, we don't know who it's from, but it looks legit. And at the end of the article, there's a handy little reminder of all the terrible ways that Russia has already interfered in the West. Well, probably, like US intelligence claims of a cyber attack on the Democratic Party's server, or hybrid warfare in Ukraine, discussed among military analysts. How about the assassination of a former Russian spy that was probably approved by Putin? Oh, and let's not forget the cyber attacks on the Estonian government. That's according to Estonian and NATO officials. Too bad there's still no concrete evidence for any of those, but who cares? Because as stories go, this one has the lot. Murder plots, spies, betrayal, and everyone's favourite baddie, Russia.
Well, the Russian embassy in London has dismissed the allegations as fake news. On its Twitter account, the diplomatic mission wrote, "Recycling long-discarded news to stoke tensions with Russia. As usual, no evidence, pure innuendo." Well, here's some reaction we got to these latest accusations.
I think what he's trying to do is use the Russians are coming again as a way to jumpstart NATO's, the Montenegro's stalled NATO bid. Because let's remember, the debate in Washington isn't about letting Montenegro in. Montenegro obviously does nothing for our defense. And in fact, if you look at opinions in Montenegro, it's not even clear most Montenegrins want to be in NATO and allied with us in the first place. The polls seem to indicate a majority that are opposed to it.
This is part of an orchestrated campaign of defamation against Russia. I think they do care about their reputation, and that's the way that falsehood is exposed. Eventually, people will stop using these sources for their information if it's shown to be basically lies or manipulations. And frankly, in Britain, it's well known that the Daily Telegraph, which is aligned with the Conservative Party, is a favoured mouthpiece for intelligence service disinformation.